Hi, this is Kwame Ennis, and welcome to the People's Forum. Oh, this is Kwame Ennis, your host of the People's Forum. We have a great topic today. The topic is going to be Puerto Rico. If you do not know where it is approximately 1,600 miles away from the U.S. mainland. It is U.S. territory, and we have a lot of opinions, both for and against what's going on in terms of the relief effort. I've got my wonderful special guests. I've got Mr. Xavier Basabe, a Puerto Rican
businessman,
activist,
yes.
You know, and Mr. Ahmed Ali El.
Happy to be here.
Happy to be here. All right, gentlemen, let's get right into it. What do you know about Puerto Rico, and where do you know it from? Talk to us. I'm going to start with you, Xavier.
Well, my family is from Puerto Rico, and actually to about I went to high school. I always thought Puerto Rico was a U.S. state, you know. But as is the case, Puerto Rico actually is a U.S. territory. I think less than 50% of the American population know that Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, and that Puerto Rico is part of the U.S. It's sort of they are citizens, but they're basically second-class citizens.
But to be fair, our president didn't know it either, so continue.
So I understand. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to forget because it's not a state. It is this sort of like middle ground between a state and an independent nation, and we don't have any representation in Congress, although we vote for president of the U.S., but we're still subject to many of the U.S. laws, and we also have to serve in the U.S. military. In almost every U.S. war in the 20th century has seen participation by Puerto Ricans, and also economically, there is sort of a one-sided trade where many of the resources and capital are taken away from the island and brought to the U.S. mainland without much benefit to those on the island.
Local.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far ahead. Mr. L, would you like to add on?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Puerto Rico, we're talking about a beautiful island. We're talking about, again, like you said, most people's misconception is that this isn't part of the United States because they don't understand the framework in which it was built. They don't understand the framework in which it was acquired. I mean, when we look at Puerto Rico, we're talking about off the heels of the Spanish-American War, the 19th century, 20th century, 1901. We're talking about America acquiring a property for nothing more than strategic location. So that means that America acquired Puerto Rico and never had a plan for Puerto Rico since the inception of acquiring Puerto Rico.
Let me say, they acquired Puerto Rico as well as the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John.
Yes.
Right.
Acquired from whom, I don't know, because they never inquired with any Puerto Ricans, any St. Thomians, Crucians, or the people from St. John about wanting to be acquired. They just walked in one day and dropped the flag. Teddy Roosevelt never really asked questions.
Right. Well,
he just ran roughshod over people.
In Puerto Rico's case, this was supposedly acquiring it from Spain's possession at that time. This was during the war with Cuba that we got into. That's a whole nother fiasco. But
so this is really about imperialism and colonialism.
Absolutely,
yes.
Absolutely, 150%.
Most recently, there's been a catastrophe in Puerto Rico, to bring it to the context of right now. Can you tell us a little bit about any personal experiences or family you've spoken to? What's going on down there? Because I know when I speak to my family in St. Croix, they're still devastated. They're still morning and evening power. They're still alternating, many of the goods and services. They're still basically floundering. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, but with case of Puerto Rico, even before the hurricane, Puerto Rico had a devastated infrastructure. So the power grid was always weak. The hurricane devastated it. Right now, as I understand it, there is power on, I think, 90% of the island. Many of the rural areas have been without power for 9 months. But to show how weak the whole electric grid is there, recently a fallen tree caused a blackout on the whole island. So this is an issue that's not only the power grid, but as far as the whole public services, it's
But
something that's
the
already
breakdown in
been.
public services has
Yeah.
directly led to the mortality rate.
Sure.
The Puerto Rican governor has listed the mortality rate as been 68 deaths caused by this hurricane. But Harvard, who they hired to do the research study, sees the number more at about 4,900.
That's right.
This doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
This is the United States of America. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, and you could see if a state like when Hurricane Katrina hit,
New
you
Orleans,
saw the
Mississippi.
devastation in New Orleans. The you could say the FEMA's response was slow, and you can imagine as that New Orleans is in the U.S. mainland, so imagine now this happening on an island where was not prepared for this kind of devastation. Puerto Rico, if it was a state, it'd be one of the poorest states in the union.
Can I
right
stop
now.
you for a second? Because you say unprepared. I mean, this is 2000 and that occurred in 2017 into 18.
yeah.
You know, this is the millennial superpower age. We have ships and planes and. What do you mean unprepared? They knew this was coming for weeks.
Oh, sure, I understand that, but
It takes 3 days for a ship to get to the
but-
Caribbean Sea.
absolutely, but there were problems with as you know, the Jones Act, which
Yes.
made it problematic to ship goods into Puerto Rico. This had to be suspended for the emergency response. So just the whole status of Puerto Rico as sort of like a colonial relation to the U.S. Set the stage for this disaster. Really,
Ahmed, can you tell us a little bit about the Jones Act, please? 1917.
So even before the Jones Act, again, just to add on to what you guys are saying, you got to remember it's almost like a poor person bracing themselves for a hurricane or something. What's happening is during the 90s there was a huge tax break for Puerto Rico that invited corporate powers into Puerto Rico. Okay, so what corporations they stood to make a 267% in tax savings. It's an IRS code called Section 936. All right, so you had all these companies in there, and basically what they're saying is for every dollar that they paid a Puerto Rican worker at this point, that means that they would save $2.67 in taxes. So basically, it was in their best interest to pay people $60,000 a year, and this was in
to save 120.
Exactly. So this is all in pharmaceuticals and hardware. So Puerto Rico did the right thing. They decided that they wanted to borrow all of this money to educate the public, have a highly skilled workforce. What happened is during the Clintons' era is that Section 936 got taken back out. Once that got taken back out, that left a huge void hole in Puerto Rico where they were in debt, and all these bondholders.
Because the companies pulled out.
The companies pulled out.
No.
So now what's happening is you got all of these rich capitalists who are buying up the debt. Okay, they're buying up the debt, and Wall Street had no issue issuing these bonds. Like I said, before we get to the Jones Act, I just want to say this: there's a GAO report that just came out, the last GAO report. What it explains out of the 20 bonds that were underwritten by Wall Street, 16 of those bonds were to finance debt. So they were creating debt to finance more debt. So just to let you know that Puerto Rico was in a bad place way before the hurricane had started. And now when we talk about the Jones Act, now we're talking about not even being able to get resources in from the rest of the world because the U.S. has applied legislation to Puerto Rico to whereas Puerto Rico can only receive goods and resources if it's coming from a U.S. ship and basically, like you were saying earlier, from a U.S. manufacturer.
Exactly. So whereas most countries in and around this hemisphere will buy in Mexico, will buy in the Philippines, will buy in China, will buy in India, we look for markets where our dollar is going to bring us more
That's right.
for our dollar.
That's right.
Puerto Rico doesn't have that advantage.
That's right.
I took down a couple, just a couple of figures. 12 eggs in Puerto Rico right now, $2.69. In the U.S., $2.38. Gallon of milk, $6.76. In Puerto Rico, $3.18 in the U.S. A banana, something that's grown locally, 83 cents in Puerto Rico, 67 cents in the U.S. The same thing with lettuce. In terms of utilities, the average Puerto Rican pays $184 a month in utilities. In U.S., we pay an average of $148. The average salary, $1,800 a month versus $2,900 a month. There's no way economically for them to do this.
That's right. And just to add on, the elephant in the room that most people aren't paying attention to is Medicaid. Puerto Rico contributes just like any other state. The funny thing is the way Medicaid works is the state contributes and the federal government contributes depending on how affluent your state may be. So if your state is affluent, the federal government is going to contribute less. Puerto Rico, one of the poorest states in the nation, the federal government contributes 50%. That's almost like what they give to Beverly Hills. So in other words, there was no way that Puerto Ricans would have come out of this debt on top. There was no way. It was a trap. It was made for them to lose.
So for U.S. politicians and presidents to blame Puerto Rico for their economic condition and call it mismanagement, is that dishonest?
That's a lack of a good term. Like dishonest is a nice way of putting it.
Sure.
It's downright evil what happened. Like I said, you're looking at the IRS tax code. You're looking at Medicaid that took place there, and you're looking at the cost of living. Not to mention in Puerto Rico, although they don't pay federal taxes, they do pay FICA out of their income, and they're not eligible for SSI.
Okay. So they pay FICA, but they're not eligible for Social Security insurance.
That's right.
If they were to become disabled.
That's right.
And like you said, Xavier, many of these men and women serve the U.S. military.
Yes.
But they don't receive the same protections.
Absolutely.
They can vote for president, but no vote in terms of the Congress or the Senate.
Well, they can't vote for president either. I don't believe they can't vote for a U.S. president.
Okay.
In their election system. They could vote for their governor, which is the representative of the island for the U.S., but usually the governor is somebody who is who follows the corporate agenda, protecting U.S. interests on the island. So the thing is, the whole relationship is just the root of the problem is just the colonialism aspect of it.
So Javier, these imperialistic practices, these colonial practices that take place in U.S. territories like Puerto Rico, is that the main culprit in the situation?
Oh yes, I believe absolutely. Historically, any power, colonialism is made to extract the resources and riches of that territory without any regard to the. I mean, rarely do the people benefit. I think if ever.
That's an excellent. I don't want to move from that point. I want you guys to touch on that right there. Extracting the resources, and that has to do with minerals as well as people, as well as intellectual properties or anything of that nature. Please.
Sure. Yeah. Because as I mentioned earlier. Puerto Ricans have been subject to the draft, and every war fought in the 20th century has included Puerto Ricans. So they really have no say in the policies of the U.S. government.
But it's a democracy.
Well, it's the situation they're put in by just that whole structure of being a U.S. territory, as opposed to being a state or an independent country. So being here in the middle, you're basically a property of the U.S. government, not really have any democratic relation to.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you right there. We're going to be right back in about 30 seconds. Please take notes. Please send in messages, emails. Let us know what you think. If you're from Puerto Rico, if you're from the U.S., let us know how your family's doing. We really appreciate it. We want to hear from you. Thank you very much.
145 over 92.
180 over 111.
I had a heart attack, a cardiac arrest, and then a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a heart attack or stroke are far from invisible or silent. Get back on your plan, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
With the dozens of aircraft carriers and all of the military grade equipment that we have, why couldn't we get to Puerto Rico earlier and do more?
Well, I believe that was, I mean, it was due to just unpreparedness on the part of the U.S. government, a very slow response. They failed to anticipate the disaster also, because as you mentioned, there was time. I mean, we knew the hurricane was heading there,
Yes.
so there was no anticipation of it shipping our supplies over.
They actually moved resources away so that they could be safe, so they could bring them back into the region after the storm had left, and we still dropped the ball. I mean, there was some, 7 to 10 days where containers weren't even getting moved off the wharf.
I think Xavier's being real nice about this. I think that the U.S. government was reluctant to do their job, to do their duty, and take care of a territory that they acquired since the 1900s, and it's nothing new, as you know. This territory has never been taken care of the way it should, unless you're affluent. If you're affluent, you're from any
The
country.
question is why, and,
Yeah.
let's not be shy. Is it because they don't speak English as their primary language? Is it because there are 3 to 4 different groups of people? Of the European-based people, there are people in the African diaspora, there are people in the Taino diaspora. I mean, what is it really about?
What it's really about at the end of the day is that the people of Puerto Rico do not affect these politicians' bottom line here, and that's what it comes down to. You're not going to unseat a politician by being a citizen of Puerto Rico, because even when we look at the different class structure, different racial and class structure within Puerto Rico, it really has nothing to do with it, because all of what's known in Puerto Rico affectionately as blanquitos, right? All of the blanquitos, and that's not necessarily just speaking about skin, but it's about a class structure. And that class structure, they don't send their children to the University of Puerto Rico. Right. Their children goes to Harvard. Their children go to Stanford. That's where their children go. So they're part of this bottom line. The people that are suffering right now in Puerto Rico, right now there's 55,000 foreclosures in Puerto Rico right now as we speak. There's 14 people being foreclosed on a day in Puerto Rico right now as we speak. And that includes farms. Without farms, there's no sustainability. So it doesn't affect their bottom line.
You know what that says to me? That says to me that if there's blood in the streets, somebody's going to buy property. If there are all of those foreclosures going on in this picturesque, tropical place, that some entity, naming corporations, are going to come in, buy cheap, build it up, and sell high.
You just called it. That's actually what's happening right now in Puerto Rico. I mean, beachfront property is for sale to the highest bidder. Meanwhile, people are getting kicked out of their homes right now. If you own a cryptocurrency company and you're not going to hire one person in Puerto Rico, but you're going to put your company within Puerto Rico, you get a tax abatement right now, and you're free. You're good to go. And that's what's happening in Puerto Rico.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. There was one that's fortunately there was a light shown on it, and we were able to reverse this situation. It's the company that was hired to repair the power grid. it's just a crony capitalism.
Right.
It's a company who had no experience,
That's right.
no resources, and were given a multi-billion-dollar contract to build Puerto Rican's infrastructure. And the owners of this company, the only reason they were selected is because they were friends of this administration. So this kind of corruption is what I mean by that relationship of a colony. It's just made to as a money source. It's made to get resources, and it doesn't necessarily benefit the people there.
So we might be our own worst enemy in terms of democracy. If we can travel around the world, policing the world for human rights and equal rights and democracy, and then we have U.S. citizens that don't have those same rights and that same democracy right here, what do you call that?
Well, that's the case. Yeah.
I call it
Hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy, but what it's always been called democracy, because it's funny. All this democracy that's been offered to every other nation has been the same situation. Every other nation.
Forgive me, I'm a public school kid, but I always remember democracy being one man, a woman, and one vote.
The people.
The people.
Right.
In our, as we call it, a special democracy, we have something called the Electoral College that does not lend to one man or one woman, one vote.
Right.
Please speak to that.
So what we have here is a plutocracy. That's what's going on. So if you have the money, and you're affluent and you're in the right place, then that's how it works. In terms of the electoral college vote, some of the aspects of the electoral college vote, which was created by Alexander Hamilton under the Federalist Papers, some of the aspects of the electoral college vote, I don't disagree with some of it, because what happens is you place power in people's hands that don't necessarily undertake and have an understanding of how the government works. So certain people, there should be an elected official in certain places, an elected official to gather the votes of the people and then say, okay, well, the majority of this county said they want to vote blue or green or what have you, and then you're supposed to take what the information the people gave you. That's how it's supposed to work. The way it works is you have electoral college representatives, period, and what they do is they vote to the highest bidder. That's what they do. So if you have a person that's campaigning, that person, if they have enough electoral college representatives underneath their belt, then they're sure to win.
I want to ask a very sticky question. About 2 days ago, our Attorney General made a statement. He read a passage or made a statement in reference to the Bible. When I came up, there was something called separation between church and state. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, this is under this government currently, there unfortunately is full of evangelical Christians who see no separation between church and state. A lot of their policies are guided by their religion, and what the Attorney General used this passage was to justify some immigration policies, and this same passages he quoted were used to justify slavery at one time. So this is something right now, that is a problem also in this administration, that it panders a lot to the evangelical community.
Yeah, I believe it was 1st or 2nd Timothy's. Don't quote me. I wasn't very attentive at Sunday school. But one question I want to ask is, this is the United States of America, home of the free, home of the brave, going all over the world fighting for people's rights to practice any religion any way they see fit. So why do we always kowtow and seem to grovel, and we always use, I think they use the word Christian and the word evangelical in the wrong way. Why do we put up with that? I mean, because it seems like a lie.
Well, a powerful voting bloc.
The man just said it, and I think America has been quite clear about this. They don't cast any aspersions when it comes to this. They say that this is a Christian nation. That's what they say. I remember the flack Obama got, from, and he said a million times that he's a Christian. I don't know how, I've never heard a man proclaim this as many times as he has, and yet and still in their minds he was a Muslim, and as though being a Muslim
Was a
as though
problem.
something like something was wrong with that. And but it's the same. See here it is. It's the same situation, and I don't want to jump off the topic, but it's the same situation you have when you have a bunch of people saying it's the Russians. It's the same situation. It's where you just draw this with this huge paintbrush, just paint everybody to be in the wrong place. That's what you're doing. You're making these people all out to be bad people. So America has never cast an aspersion. They always said that this was a Christian nation, and they will use Christianity to back up to enforce slavery, because you can't call that anything else. These children in the cages. I know that's where you were going with it.
Yeah, and since we're there, what is your opinion on the immigration policies of this nation around the world? We only have 3 minutes, but please, quickly.
Well, I mean, this immigration policy needs to change, and we need to set up a system where, we need a certain amount of people to come into the U.S., and handle unskilled labor. It's something that we need to set up a sensible policy where it makes it easier for people to come in. Also, many of the problems that a lot of these people are fleeing also have been
But I have to
exacerbated
tell
by
you,
U.S. policy.
Our president in this new administration has said that they want skilled labor, that they don't want the unskilled labor, that there should be a merit-based system, that you should have to submit almost your resume
Right.
to be hired by America to have the privilege to come here, that this is a privilege, not a right.
Yeah, but very few Americans are willing to go out in the fields and pick and do farm work, pick crops here. Every season there's a need for these people to come in, and that's the reason they come here. There's a need for these people to come in, pick the crops, and we should set up some kind of system where you could allow the seasonal labor to come in.
Well, we had that in place. That in fact was in place, and it was in place for many years. We got about a minute and a half left.
I just don't think Congress is doing their job, to be very honest with you. And I think that Obama was put in a position where he had to, like I said, put together some shoddy legislation or act rather, to be enforced by the Department of Homeland Security. We had to know that wasn't going to last too long. I'm speaking about DAPA and DACA at this point. We had to know that wasn't going to last too long. So Congress still has failed to do their job in reference to immigration and creating a system that will actually work, and that for that will work for everyone. The scare tactics haven't worked either. The 12 million undocumented aliens, and they're saying there's 200 million jobs within the U.S. and they're saying these people are going to take your jobs. The math doesn't even add up. So it's just ridiculous.
This has been a fantastic show. We have to come back and do it again. I thank both of you for coming.
Thank
This was
you.
wonderful,
Thank you for
wonderful,
having me.
wonderful.
Great to be here.
Okay. Thank you very much for having us, People's Forum. Hopefully you can email us at thepeoplestalkforum@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought. Let us know where you want us to go. Thank you very much. Kwame Ennis.